colleges. I, Chaitra from PG Department of Commerce, welcome you all to this national level workshop on choosing the right statistical tools for social science research, organized by PG Department of Commerce and IQSC Sri Bonendra College, Karkala. It is a great pleasure and honor to invite you all to this workshop. Research cannot be overlooked in today's fast-changing environment. It becomes the vital duty of researcher not only to be updated with latest developments, but also ensure that their research benefits society as a whole. Research is a continuous and dynamic activity, and purpose of research is to discover answer to questions through the application of scientific procedures. Therefore, main focus of this workshop is to enable the participants to choose the right statistical tool for their research question and systematically finding solution to research problem. Before starting the workshop, it's my immense pleasure and introduce resource person of today's national level workshop, Dr. Manjunath S., Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Government First Grade College, Chennapatna, Bangalore. Dr. Manjunath S. has done MPhil in Economics and completed PhD from University of Mysore and currently working as Assistant Professor of Economics at Government First Grade College, Chennapatna. He is a diploma holder in Statistical Process Control and Operation Research and has 10 years of academic experience in government sector. He attended and presented many papers at both international and national conferences of reputed colleges and also served as state resource person from Karnataka for new education policy of union government. He is a subject expert and resource person, Education Satellite Program of Government of Karnataka, Department Collegiate Education, member of Board of Studies of Autonomous Colleges and worked as RUSA coordinator and IT coordinator. He has conducted more than 40 workshops across Karnataka, which include workshops at state universities, deemed to be universities, private universities, reputed colleges of Bangalore University, Mysore University, as well as Mangalore University. His area of specialization is econometrics by using EVS and R. His area of interest is cross-section, time series, and panel data analysis, as well as optimization techniques, data analysis by MS Excel, as well as statistical analysis by use on choosing the right statistical tool for social science research. Welcome you, sir. Now, I request the chairperson of today's workshop and backbone of our college activities, our beloved principal, Dr. Manjunath Kotyan, sir, to give presidential remark. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful resource person of this national webinar, Dr. Manjunath. Convener of the webinar, Madam Chaitra. Dear participants, my technical team, at the outset, I welcome you all to this national webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, you all blissfully aware, social science deals with the study of society and the relationship among individuals with society, within society. It includes business, sociology, commerce and management, demography, so on. Science research provides authentic information to the people that are scientifically proven so that end users can rely upon it. It also helps us in finding the solutions to different social problems. I firmly believe there is no end to the social science research. It's actually ongoing. It helps diverse subjects, areas to achieve their motives and plays an important role in all fields. Statistical methods are and essential tools and play a vital role in social science research. It helps in designing experiments, analyzing and interpreting data. It also contributes to making appropriate decisions in the light of the researcher's findings. Statistics allows to understand a subject much more deeply. Ladies and gentlemen, but challenge is that many beginners in the field of research face problems in deciding the appropriate statistical test for their research problem. Even experienced researchers or those who have spent time away from statistics may feel a bit rusty and need a refresher. Without the use of statistics, it would be very difficult to make decisions based on the data collected from the research work. It is extremely important for a researcher to know what statistics they want to use before they collect their data. Otherwise, data might be collected that is uninterpretable. Unfortunately, when this happens, it results in a loss of data, time, and money. An understanding of basic statistics will provide the fundamental skills necessary to read and evaluate most result sections. The ability to extract meaning, evaluate research from a statistical perspective are fundamental skills that will enhance researcher knowledge and understanding in the related coursework. Ladies and gentlemen, statistical data analysis has gained popularity in different fields of research. Knowledge in statistics provides with the necessary tools and conceptual foundations in quantitative reasoning to extract information intelligently from sea of data. The statistical tools are often used to communicate research findings and support hypotheses and give credibility to research methodology and conclusion. Dear friends, through this workshop, participants will learn about different statistical tools available in social science research and selection of the right type of analytical tools encountered in research work. The participants will be exposed to identify and determining the need for statistical tools in research, which facilitates capacity building of the faculty members and researchers in their respective domain. With this view, we have organized a national webinar on choosing the right statistical tool for social science research. I'm very much happy this afternoon we have a well-versed scholar to guide us on these matters, Dr. Manjunath. Once again, on behalf of the institution, so I welcome you most respectfully.
Thank you, sir.
I welcome all the participants and webinar coordinator, Madam Chaitra, and my technical team. Over to Dr. Manjunath. Sir, please.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At the beginning, a great foundation was laid by the Honorable Principal of the institution, as well as a brief introduction about the entire webinar was shared by Chaitra. And it is my indeed pleasure to take this session during this pandemic situation. However, most of the concepts of statistics which required a face-to-face interaction, but making a virtual class and a virtual well-beingness, which make most of the concepts to be very abstract, as well as which make us to be very difficult to convey the concepts. But we try a level best so that the concept can be clarified, as well as the issues and the queries can be taken care to address and solve your queries. Before starting the session, let me say my outline of the entire webinar. This webinar actually has been intended to speak about which are the right statistical tool for social science research. But as we know, research is a systematic approach to deal with the problem or to find a solution to the problem or to understand the society or a social phenomena. However, the research is a complex phenomenon where no one particular tool can be cited as a right tool, because each and every statistical tool have been derived, have been invented, have been discovered by great statisticians or intellectual guys with a specific purpose. Hence, every statistical tool which have its own objectives, assumption, as well as limitations. Hence, instead of saying a one particular statistical tool can be used universally, I will say that each and every statistical tool which have its own purpose and own limitation. Hence, as a researcher, so we have to take some of the little bit precautions to apply the tool or to find out which tool can be appropriate to deal with my research questions or to answer my research issues or to test my hypothesis which has been proposed during the process of research. Therefore, the entire participants, as I was discussing with Chaitra yesterday, she has been told actually the entire participants crowd, which is a mix of a faculty as well as industrial experts and students. Since it is a heterogeneous crowd, so let me take a simple step initially, and then I will go more on to the advanced stages to deal with the statistical tool. So let me share my PPT. Hope my screen is visible. Can anybody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, so where in my slide, the title slide, choosing the right statistical tool for social science research. This is our title of the webinar. So while dealing with this webinar, so the word right has been marked in a green color, which means that why we have used the word right. So I do think actually the right word is not a right word over here, because instead of right, we can say appropriate. As I was discussing with you, every statistical tool has its own purpose and limitation as well as the assumption. So before using any statistical tool, we have to find out whether the tool which have been intended to use, will it meet the assumption or will it have its own limitation? So how I can actually justify the particular statistical tool to address my particular statistical research assumption or research issues. Let us moving on to the process of research. Though I can directly get into the statistical tool, before getting into this, we have to have some of the foundation about the research process, where research process will be a systematic, step-by-step, logical, and iterative process, where the most of our statistical tools and techniques which comes to help or to comes to utility for the researcher in the process of research, especially in the seventh step, which is mentioned in my slide, wherein the seventh step, which have been mentioned as the data collection, analysis, and interpretation. So in this step, the role of statistics which play a vital role. Therefore, most of the researcher, we make use of statistics and tools and techniques in the seventh step of the research process, as mentioned in this slide, as well as in the eighth step to test the hypothesis. However, in the recent days, due to the availability of the computer software and data information technology, all have made the researcher can also use statistics in a different sense, especially for the process, in the process of literature review. So therefore, when we say research process may be start from observation, or start from talking to the people, or start from interaction with the people, or reading some ideas from the people mind, or people action, people behavior, or social phenomena. One can get the research idea in a very abstract manner. But whatever the research idea or issues they get in an abstract manner, it has to be materialized by giving some evidence, by making a logical study, and to give a scientific reason to the problem or issues. Therefore, whatever abstract idea a researcher or who are actually intending to do a research, when they get from the social phenomena, occurrence of the phenomena, so they will try to gather the data in terms of literature, so that to materialize the issues which can further deal scientifically to give us an outcome in a materialistic path. Therefore, the step 2 where we say literature review, in the process of literature review also, researcher can make use of statistics. So this is what actually today's world actually we say, the statistics techniques and tools may not actually come only in the process of data analysis and interpretation or testing the hypothesis. Even it also comes us to help in the process of reviewing the literature. So we may actually have an issue. How can statistics can help us in the reviewing literature? Because nowadays actually whenever actually we speak about literature, literature is actually very vast, wherein literature can be a research article or a journal or a book or a reference or a movie or a sound or an interview. So it has a lot of different dimension. However, when we say a research journal or a research article, so most of the cases we may be having, the research database. It may be Scopus or a JGate or a JSTOR. So different. So Google Scholar, the different research database we have very broader way, and with the keyword search in a fraction of second we can have a n number of research articles which have been published in the area which where we are looking for. But when we use a keyword, basically we may get actually thousands of articles or thousands of materials regarding the particular area. But out of the thousands or whatever hundreds, we have to narrow down with the specific keywords. In the process of narrowing the entire research searching process, literature searching process, what we generally basically do, we go for citation analysis, or we go for metadata analysis, we go for social network analysis, we go for bibliometric analysis, centrometric analysis. Like in the field of library science information, the library science information professionals, they have come up with a different way of reviewing, different way of identifying the literature which are having high productivity. Because everyone we write an article, but all our research article may not be having productivity, may not be having impact on the research, because some of our research article we publish for the sake of publication. But at the end of the day, we have to find out who are the people who have read my article, who are the people who are making use of my article. So if that is a question, that is an issue, so we should identify which are the research article which are having more productivity. So the sense of productivity of a research article, so it will be identified through a literature survey, through bibliometric or a centrometric or a. So may I request any one of the participants, so don't actually use your screen or screen sharing, because you are making a color and you are making damage on the screen. Is a pardon.
Okay,
Fine.
sir. Okay.
Uh, the parts, the researcher basically they do use most of the scenario of the literature or literature review. In the literature review process, basically they do use a lot of statistical techniques in the sense of a centrometric, in the sense of bibliometric, in the sense of webometric. So like the way we can make use of a little bit of statistics to identify the wonderful research articles which are having higher productivity as well high relevance in the research area. In the step 2, also the statistics play a vital role. Moving from step 2, the step 3 or step 4, step 5, maybe step 4, 5. So we may use statistics in a very abruptly or very rare cases. But in the process, when we get into the step 7, where our statistics which play a vital role. But most of the researcher, basically, they may be doing a research for the first time, or they may be taking a research project from other side. So when they get into a data, but they may be getting a lot of confusion or a lot of abruptness in which is the particular statistical tool which is helpful for my research. So some of the cases it happens actually they may collect the data, and after collecting data they will go to the statistician or they will go to the analyst to take to seek help from them that how I can use a particular tool so to analyze my data. In such cases, they will be able to get the idea that the tool what they wanted to do or what they wanted to apply may not be suitable for the data what they have been collected. I mean to say there will be a proper disintegration between the data what you might be having with you, or the kind of research question you wanted to answer, and the and the set of tool that you wanted to use. Therefore, whenever we do any kind of a research or when you want to do any empirical analysis or empirical research, in all those empirical study, what we have to do, we have to find out first actually what type of research question I do have with me and what type of hypothesis I wanted to test, or what type of a research question I want to address, or what are my research objectives. So all we can use synonymously. So any researcher, first and foremost thing, you wanted to know what are my research objectives, what are my research question, or what are the research issue I wanted to address in my process of research, and what are the hypotheses have been formulated so that I can make use of them to give evidence to my research question to answer. So the first and foremost thing, before using any statistical tool, a researcher while doing the literature review, he must be able to find out the objective of the research and followed by research issues or research questions, and then the tentative hypothesis what has been formulated. once a researcher has a clear and clarity about this issue, then he can move on to the in the statistical process. Because the statistical process way, the tools are only for a meant for tools. So the tools may not actually serve all the purpose. Therefore, whichever tool you want to apply, don't apply the tool for the sake of applying. You have to apply the tool for the sake of addressing the research question or for the sake of testing the hypothesis. Therefore, so instead of applying each and every tool, whether it is relevant, whether it is not relevant, so some of the researchers, they do apply all the tools. Make sure that what tool you are using, is it appropriate for your research question to apply, or whether the research tool what I'm trying to apply, whether will it be able to justify to test the hypothesis. So like the way a researcher, first and foremost thing, you should be able to deal what are my research question, which is the appropriate statistical tools or techniques. So now again, every statistical tool have been derived, have been invented with several purpose, several intention. Therefore, before applying any tool, I should know why this tool has been used, for what purpose it has been derived, what are its objective and what are its limitation. Until unless, without knowing this, if you apply any tool in the process of research evaluation, in the process of Viva, maybe you may be able to get some of the different questions where a researcher will become quiet to answer those issues. Hence, before deciding the tools and techniques, you should be able to know a little bit of statistics, the theoretical part of statistics, why this tool has been derived, what is the purpose of it, and what are its objectives, and what are its capabilities, and what are its limitations. If you once know it, then definitely whatever research tool you will apply for your research, definitely you can justify, and also you can give a empirical evidence with empirical data, and you can generalize or you can evidence your research questions in a materialistic form. Therefore, for every researcher, so one key note from this presentation is that rather learning statistical formula or rather learning any particular software, you should know what tool I'm using for what purpose, what are its objective, what are its limitation. If you know the theoretical part of it, then definitely you will be having a holistic approach, or the sense of completeness. So before getting into the research in a complex manner of giving conclusion or giving decision or making generalization, so all this process will become quite easy. Hence, moving to the next slide. Yes, here I've been mentioned statistics in a very general sense. So this is the most popular sense to use statistics as a univariate statistics, and followed by bivariate statistics, and followed by multivariate statistics. Before discussing with all these three part of statistics, so let me interact with the participants. Is it actually the voice is very clear?
Sir, clear. Yes, sir.
And yeah, if you have any kind of a query, so what you can do, actually you can drop the message in a chat box, so that little bit of after an hour, so we pick those questions and we'll try to interact, because in a face-to-face interaction it is quite easy to interact, whereas in a webinar, in a virtual mode, so interaction might be difficult, and it will become something like a monotonous presentation. So it shouldn't happen. Actually, you have come to a presentation for the sake of you are attending the webinar to learn something. So let us actually have interaction also. Whatever query that you will be having, drop a message in a chat box, so that we'll pick those things and we'll try to address during the process of our presentation. Hence, let us say actually univariate, bivariates, multivariate. Why have we actually classified statistics in three sense of univariate, bivariate, and multivariate? What does it actually play a role? Generally, any social science research, they may be using the research, or they are conducting research for the sake of addressing some social phenomena. So let us say actually what are the social phenomena. So in the pandemic situation, we have seen the migration, and whichever we say the corona as COVID-19 has been affected very vulnerably to the migrated labor, or the migrated labor. So in the migrated labor, who are the migrated labor to whom the COVID-19 has been affected very vulnerably? That is the purpose I wanted to address. Yes, in the process of research, so my intention that I want to find out, or I wanted to study, so which is the area where, which is the area where the migrated labor have been vulnerably affected due to the COVID-19. If that is my issue, then I want to identify keywords, or I want to give an operational definition of a few words like the affected. So are you taking the word, or are you using the word affect in a positively or negatively? Since because of migration, because of COVID-19, the migration has taken reverse migration. I mean to say, from urban to rural. Since the migration of the labor has been taken in a reverse form from rural to urban, so maybe the urban area which has got whatever the pressure it was facing from so many decades, it has been relaxed, and the pollution of the Bengaluru city and metropolitan city has been reduced. It is a positive effect of migration due to COVID-19. But at the same time, due to COVID-19, the migrated people's migration has been affected their lifestyle and their social, also standard of living, and they have become a jobless. They have been getting to the street with hungerness. So these are the negative aspect of the migration. So when I say that COVID-19 and its effect on the migrant labor, I should define: am I addressing a positive scenario? Am I addressing negative scenario? Am I addressing both positive as well as negative impact of COVID-19 on migrant people or migrant laborers? If that is the case, then I've been defined the COVID-19, its impact on income of the migrant labor, or COVID-19, its impact on job loss. If I say COVID-19 and its impact on job loss or unemployment or income, now I am trying to measure its impact on only the income. So what was their income prior to COVID-19, during the lockdown and post-lockdown period? What is their level of income? So I wanted to measure and I wanted to compare. Now income is the only one variable I'm trying to address. So through my research, in that case, what we generally say is univariate statistics. Any research question, if it is addressing only one particular variable in the process of research, in the process of research objective, so now in such cases one can use only descriptive statistics, only univariate statistics. Again, under univariate statistics, so we have a different approaches or different concepts. Each and every concept do have a different purpose to serve. Now let us say actually the measure of central tendency, which is the descriptive statistics, is very well known to all of us because we are studying this from school days. When we say descriptive statistics, basically which describes any phenomena and which help us to represent any phenomena through a single value or through a multi-values. Now, if I collect migrated laborers, their income prior COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, I mean to say post-lockdown period. Now I have a two situation, pre and post. During the pre-period, so like let me say one 6-month income, and post-lockdown 6-month income. Now, when I say 6-month income, probably every month the income may be fixed or maybe actually vary from person to person. So if you are doing a cross-sectional study, I mean to say cross-section, collecting data from different individuals who have been scattered at different scenario, different geographical area. If you are pulling the data from a different individual who have been actually scattered in a cross-sectional manner, then how are you going to represent those people's income through a single value so that you can make a comparison? So like in that case, the descriptive statistics in the name of central tendency, which help us to describe the phenomena through some statistical tool like average. So what is their average income prior COVID-19? What is their average income? So during the post lockdown period. So now we will be having, even though we may be collected, the sample size of 500, but each and every 500 samples income cannot be comparable. Rather, to compare, what we generally do, we reduce the 500 sample income to a single value, the single value which describe the overall 500 samples income during COVID-19 before and COVID-19 after lockdown, like a central tendency which help us to find out those scenarios. And at the same time, the income from person to person may not remain same because every individual have their different capability, different educational background, and different employment and employment status. Therefore, their income also do vary. In such cases, I want to identify whether there is a kind of a variation in their income, whether how much of variation is there in their income. Before COVID-19, the COVID-19 lockdown, what is the income disparity or income variability is there? And after COVID-19, after post-lockdown, what is the income variation one has? So that I wanted to find out whether the variation in income has been increased due to COVID-19 and lockdown. because earlier before COVID-19, the life of the people, the common people life was actually normal and calm, and it was somehow actually the income variation was quite low. Since because of COVID-19, there was a huge job loss. The people who were earning 10,000 K or 10K prior COVID-19, due to COVID and lockdown, they have been actually now earning an income of 1,000 rupees because of job loss. They may be earning nothing now. So now you can compare actually what is the variation in their income, whether the variation has been expanded, has been increased after lockdown, and before COVID-19, what is their income variation? So I want to compare the variation of the income. If you want to make a comparison of a variation, a comparison of a income, in such cases, income variation, one can go for using the measure of dispersion. The measure of dispersion basically which help us to identify, so the variation uh, in the income, so during pre and post. That is where actually we use measure of dispersion. And when you come to the measure of distribution, basically the measure of distribution may not actually help us to, to do any kind of analysis directly. However, some of the statistical tool and most of our statistical tool, as I've been actually mentioned earlier in the initial itself. So every statistical tool has its own assumption. It's been derived based on some assumption, theoretical, underlying constraint. So that we wanted to identify whether the statistical tool what I'm using, whether it meets its purpose, whether it is fulfilling their assumption. Like we say normality. Normality is one of the underlying assumption in most statistical tools and techniques. Therefore, how do I know actually my data, what I've been collected from the field, which serve the purpose of normality? Does it deviate from normality? So that and all actually I want to verify before conducting any statistical test or any statistical analysis. Therefore, to find out whether the data has been meeting the purpose of normality, whether my data actually goes as per the ANOVA, what assumption has been laid on ANOVA, or what assumption ANOVA basically depends on which my data will fulfill or not. If my data fulfill those assumptions, definitely I can apply those tools. I can actually test the hypothesis. I can give a conclusion. I can draw a conclusion. If not, I should verify why the assumption has been broke in my data. So how my assumption can be mitigated in my research process, like the way that one has to do. Therefore, the measure of distribution like skewness and kurtosis, all this basically help us to identify whether the tool has, whether the data what we have collected from the field empirically, whether it does meet or serve the purpose of assumption on which the tools have been derived. Like univariate statistics, basically, as I was mentioned in a nutshell, it basically deals about a single variable. The single variable you can describe by using central tendency, or single variable you can describe in a sense of a variation, variability, as well as single variable you can describe in the name of to test the assumption of a statistical tools or technical statistical theory. In this way, univariate statistics basically help us to describe the phenomena. That's it. Describing the phenomena in terms of average value, or describing the phenomena in terms of variability, or describing the phenomena, does the phenomena data which serve the purpose of statistical assumption or statistical theory on which the theory has been based on. This is the purpose of univariate statistics. However, from the univariate statistics, one cannot actually draw, prediction. One cannot draw explanation. What is the cause for this? Why this variable is affected by another variable? Like I mean to say, I said actually because of lockdown, the income disparity has enhanced. So this is the conclusion I am writing. When I say because of lockdown, because of COVID-19, the post-COVID-19 income disparity is higher when compared to the post pre-COVID-19 income disparity. If I make a condition like this, then how can I actually say COVID-19 income disparity after lockdown and before lockdown? So now I have taken two situations or two cases where I wanted to measure income disparity or income variability, and income variability whether which is actually high, which is low. So I want to make a comparison. So in such cases, I have two variables, pre and post variable. If you have a two variable, whether it is a pre or a post, whether X or Y, then the univariate statistics may not actually solve the purpose. In such cases, we move from a simple single variable analysis to bivariate analysis. I mean to say bivariate statistics. The bivariate statistics basically which help us to connect two variables in such a way that whether there is a kind of relationship between these two variables, does this two variable, one variable is affected by another variable, or whether one variable can explain or can predict the other variable. In such cases, what we generally do, we make use of bivariate. So bivariate under which, so we have covariance concept, we have regression, and we have correlation, all three concepts. Basically, in statistics, whenever we say two variables, the two variable maybe one is causing for another variable, one is effect for one variable has been got affected due to the another variable. Like we may be studying cause and effect, we may be studying effect, we may be studying impact. If a researcher intention is, if a researcher intention is to find out the impact of one variable on another variable, what tool one has to use? Or if a researcher purpose is, to find out whether the two variable go together. So what kind of a relationship exists between these two variables? If that is a purpose, so we can use a linear association in terms of covariance, in terms of regression, in terms of correlation. But however, the covariance is a concept of a bivariate statistical tool which help us to measure linear association. However, it is not independent of scale of measurement. So because when you measure two variable in two different scales, you may be getting the different amount of covariance. So let me say x and y variable both are measured in kg, you will get covariance as some value. The same x and y, if you convert into grams, if you measure covariance, you will get some other covariance answer. So the covariance is not actually independent of scale of measurement. Therefore, we cannot make a comparison by using covariance. When you want to make a comparison in terms of a relationship, better to go with simple correlation, which deals about only relationship with two variables. But my purpose, not just to address the or to measure the relation between two variables, rather my purpose is, if it is, explain the variation of y due to x. I mean to say, y variable is caused, y variable is changing. The change in y variable, I mean to say delta y, it is caused by due to change in x. If my purpose is this, then I want to go for using simple regression. Therefore, simple regression is basically which helps us to identify whether x has impact on y, whether y is changing due to change in x. If that is a reason, then I have to go for using simple regression. Hence, bivariate statistical tools are basically which help us to measure two variable in the form of relationship, in the form of variation, or in the form of effect of one variable on another variable. In that way, the bivariate statistical tool which help us to serve the purpose of research questions. However, nowadays, our research questions are not just only one variable or two variable. Most of our research questions are which are complex in nature, which may be having more than two variable. Because earlier 20 years back, most of the research papers were actually having only single variable univariate statistical tool or a bivariate statistical tool. But after the advent of statistical packages and computers and different programming languages, so availability of data is also becomes quite easy, and also application of tools also become very easy, because in a fraction of second, different kind of algorithm and optimization technique can be generated and iterated, as well as the solution can be derived. Therefore, nowadays, most of the statistical researcher, every researcher, they intended to move from very simple kind of analysis to complex kind of analysis, the complex degree of analysis. The simple from univariate to the complex, I mean to say multivariate statistical tool. But so the purpose of a tool, as I was earlier mentioning, the purpose of tool is not just for the sake of application of tool, not for the sake of application, but it is for the sake of mitigating, it is for the sake of describing or addressing the research question. Therefore, what one has to do, whether you want to do a different high level of statistics for your research question, or shall I satisfy with a simple analysis, that is up to the researcher. Because most of the researcher with a simple frequency, with simple percentage, so with a simple proportion, simple ratio, they finish their PhD or they will finish their research work. But some of the research work, so these tools and techniques may not be sufficient. They want to go for advanced kind of tools and techniques. The advanced tools and techniques, because they always help us to answer some complex scenario. So what is the complex scenario? So earlier I was discussing one concept. I mean to say, the concept was basically whether x causes y. Whether x causes y was the concept I was discussing in the previous bivariate slide. But whereas when we use two variable case, so our simple research question can be answered by using X causing Y. But sometimes it happens in such a way that we wanted to find out some of the scenario where X may be causing, there may be X which X is causing Y, but again Y is causing another variable Z. So the COVID-19, the lockdown effect is causing the standard of life, the income of the people. Since income of the people have been affected because of lockdown, this income has affected the standard of living of the people. Now I am bringing three scenario: the lockdown effect on income and income effect on the standard of living of the people. If that is my case, then my bivariate statistical tool may not sufficient to address. That's the one thing. The second thing, when our researcher wants to develop their own questionnaire, in such cases, so our bivariate statistical tools and techniques may not actually support. Therefore, one has to think in such a way that simple research questions can be answered by univariate and bivariate. But when you want to answer some complex question, in such case, our simple tools and bivariate tools may not sufficient. Therefore, we have to move from simple to bivariate to multivariate. Under multivariate again, if I want to find out the relationship between more than two variables, one can go for using multiple regression or a multiple correlation. Or if one wants to do a classification, I will be discussing this later. So you can go for discriminant analysis, or if one wants to go for identifying the data structure in the empirical data, in the collected data, then they can go for factor analysis. Like multivariate statistics, which has its own purpose. Therefore, I'm just not elaborating multivariate statistics right now because I will be having separate explanation for all this. So now in a nutshell, the multivariate statistical tool, which not only help us to, to deal with the more than two variable, which also help us to identify interdependency. I mean to say not dependency, interdependency. I mean to say X causes Y, sometimes Y also do causes X. And both together can cause Z also. If that is the case, in such cases, our univariate and bivariate may not be sufficient to mitigate those issues. Therefore, we move from simple analysis to complex analysis. This is the basic foundation I'm just laying to introduce these, which are the statistical tools which are appropriate for research question. So now let me take some questions from you. Then I will move on to the next one, because rather making monotonous, let us have some interaction, some question, and then we'll move to the next slide presentation. I wanted to discuss which are the statistical tool and which are the research question you can apply. So now, am I audible to the organizers? Organizer can unmute, turn on their mic or turn on their mic, so that if they have a question they can interact. Then for 5 minutes, then I will go to the next slide.
Yes, sir, audible.
Yeah.
There is no question, sir, actually.
There is no question, ma'am.
No question, sir.
If any participant, if you wanted to actually have any questions, you can type. Yeah. So Ujita Banu ma'am, she's asking me one question that,
Yeah.
sir, when
Yes,
we
sir.
are measuring impact of a policy, say PDS or women health, then can we use multivariate analysis? Ma'am, your question, which is measuring the impact of a policy, say PDS, public distribution system. So the impact of PDS on women health. Now, when you say PDS is one variable you have chosen, and as well as women health is another variable you have chosen. So only two variables you have chosen. However, when you say women health has a multi-dimension. I mean to say multi-dimension. I mean to say women health in terms of their longevity, women health in terms of their health condition, women health in terms of diseases. So like you can derive women health or women health in a multi-dimension approach. So if you're defining the women health in a multi-variable approach, then you can make use of multivariate analysis. If not, if you are identifying the woman health with only single variable like longevity, if any woman who live for a long number of years, so if they are having long term, then so they are having very healthy. If the woman they are not actually having lifespan, a short lifespan, then they may be not having good health. So if you are defining the woman health in what basis? The operational definition of woman health. operational definition of women health, you can define in terms of lifespan, or you can define in terms of their health condition, whether they have a disease or not, or another variable. So that depends upon you. How are you going to operationalizing the definition of women health? If you define the operational definition of women health with only one single indicator, then so PDS and women health one indicator, we can use only simple regression, that's more than enough. But if you're defining women health in a different multivariate indicator, then you can go for multivariate analysis. So then anything else? Sushmita ma'am, yeah, we have complete one 5 to 10 minutes explanation about factor analysis. Definitely, I will be discussing about factor analysis now, because I will be having a future slides, further slides, which discuss about all this now. So anything else from the participant side? If not, I will move on to the next slide. Yeah, now Shanti ma'am, she's saying me that, sir, very difficult to relate and understand very quickly. Possible to get the content for our reference. Yeah, ma'am, definitely. So the slides will be shared to all of you, and as well as the basic reference, the list also will be sent to you over the mail, ma'am. So we'll do that, ma'am. So whatever actually I'm presenting here, that will be distributed to all of you and will be taken care, ma'am. So NPA is a negative effect on credit risk. Which analysis can we use? Shulila ma'am, she's asking me one question that NPA is a negative effect on credit risk. Ma'am, just only two variables you've taken, NPA, non-performing asset, and credit risk. And without doing any study, now only we are saying that there is a negative effect. So definitely actually, because already there are underlying lot of theories are speaking that, so increasing in NPA do have an impact on credit risk. Yeah, definitely. Increase in NPA and credit risk, does it actually falls, or in decreasing NPA, does it actually increase the credit risk or decreasing credit risk? So that this kind of a directional relationship that you want to measure. If you want to measure the directional relationship between these two variables, simple correlation is sufficient. However, if you want to further go ahead, like how it impacts, what is a kind of a measurement of impact, then you can go further, even regression also in the process of building model map. So for this your research question, for this your question query, so simple regression is sufficient. But if you want to model it, then you have to move from correlation to regression analysis map. Well, now next moving to the, because as of now actually there is no question, so then we'll move on to the next. Actually, I have a problem with the screen share over here, because I could not able to present in a full screen. That's the reason every moment actually I'm just going from screen share, stop and share again. I don't know actually what is the problem here. Yeah. Now let us move to the next slide. Anman sir, actually, so I will be discussing your questions, sir, in next case, because let us start with the slide. I will discuss with you in about the mudra and its effect on MSME. Yes, definitely, sir. Now, next concept here, what are the kind of research question we have, and what are the appropriate tool I can use and techniques I can apply? Because most of researchers, as we are actually discussing, in the process of research in the preliminary stage and even in the advanced stage, we always actually fail to understand what kind of study I want to do. In such cases, generally what we do, unnecessary actually we assume some tools and techniques based upon some advice or based on some literature. So rather actually in following the concepts or identifying the tools very blindly, try to read and understand the research question, because the underlying techniques and tools and associate tools and techniques is basically directly connected with your research question, with your research objective, with your hypothesis. Therefore, broadly have been actually taken some of the research questions frequently used by researchers, based on which what tool can be applicable, which are the appropriate tool we can use. So in that way, actually, I've been designed this further slides up. So now the research questions. The research question basically have taken what type of research question a researcher may be addressing. Generally, researcher, when they do research, they will be having some objectives. Objective number 1, objective number 2, objective number 3, like this. So one mom, she posed me a question that, so what kind of a negative relationship, a negative effect of NPA on credit risk? Now, that research question is basically telling us the kind of relationship between the variables. If a research questions or a research objective is basically focusing on identifying the research objective In such cases, we can make use of simple degree of relationship. I mean to say, if your research questions are basically dealing about the measuring the relationship among the variable, one can use these tools in their research. So bivariate correlation, multiple correlation, sequential. So we'll be discussing all this. So if any research question is basically about the degree of relationship, then one can use these many tools. When to use these many tools? Again, it depends upon what type of a degree of relationship you are addressing and how many variable you're trying to address, based on which you can pick all these, any one of this, depending upon the nature of variable as well as number of variables. If not, a researcher also may be intended to study the whether one group will significantly different from another group. I mean to say, as students in a class, we have been picked the students, those students who have been actually given a class in one-to-one, face-to-face interaction and face-to-face teaching. So I mean to say, the chalk and talk method that we have been delivered to the students. And we wanted to measure the impact of the students, impact of a chalk and talk method on the students, the traditional teaching method. And later, the same class with the same individual, we may be doing another experiment. I mean to say, we are taking online classes. Because of COVID-19, we are engaging the same class, same students, but not to face-to-face, but instead of face-to-face, we are taking online classes. Again, after having online classes, I wanted to measure what is the impact of online teaching on the students. Now we have two differences. Now, does the students who attend the class through online do perform well when compared to they are attending the class in a traditional chalk and talk method? So whether that group is different from this group. If both the group, because same individual, but method of teaching is different. The experiment is method of teaching. If a method of teaching varies in a two different scenario, does the student in two groups, same student in different condition, will they behave in a similar way or will they differ in a differently? That is what actually the purpose of the research. If any researcher wants to address whether the two groups are more than two groups also, well, they differ significantly among themselves because of different condition, because of different experiment process, then what are the tool one can apply? So in such cases, the significance of group difference, this is actually, it comes to handy to address all those issues. Again, in the significance of group difference, we have many tools. One of the simple way will be t-test and followed by ANOVA 2. The highest complex concept will be like factorial, Mankova, and profile analysis. These are the different tools we apply. So whenever our research question or research objective is dealing about group differences. So this is the second set of research question most of our researchers may be posing in their research process or in the research objective. And some of the research questions, especially in economics, especially in finance, especially in demography, we wanted to predict something else. Because our study may not be just to identify the relationship between the groups, like in the first scenario, or not just to identify whether the group differs significantly in the two different conditions or through a different condition of exposure. Rather, our objective will be like predicting one with the help of another one. I mean to say, I want to say what will be the probable value of Y because of X value. Due to X is something. So if the purpose of any researcher is to predict the one variable with the help of one or more than one, in such cases, this will come to our help, like prediction of group membership. The prediction of group membership again, which will be something like in very simple way, multiple regression, simple regression, to again, the categorical variable like what we say, discriminant analysis and logistic regression, all this. Again, the group membership prediction, which may be again depending upon the nature of variable as well as the kind of variable and number of variable and degree of relationship. So based on which we can pick any one of these tools and techniques. Now moving to the next research question. So now I've been discussing about three research questions. The first one is, if a research question is basically deals about discussing about the relationship, then we can use any one of these concepts. If our research question is basically deals about the group differences, we can use any one of this. Or if our research question is basically deals about prediction, then we can make use of all these tools and techniques. Now, our research question may not be actually complete only with this three set of questions. Rather, we may be having some other set of questions. What are some other set of questions? Some other set of questions may be like describing the structure of the data. Why do we have to describe the structure of data? What is the purpose of describing the data structure? In social science research, especially in management, in commerce, generally what happens, a researcher wants to make use of primary study. Primary study is nothing but questionnaire method. Whenever they wanted to go for doing a questionnaire study, in such cases, what happens generally, so they may be using some of the questionnaire which is already been invented or already been developed and proposed by some eminent people who have been expert in those same area. If they have been expert in the same area, definitely we can pick the same questionnaire and we can collect data and we can do our analysis and we can test our hypothesis. That's actually one set of doing analysis. Whereas in some time, actually, the kind of research question we are having, to mitigate those research questions, to answer those research questions, the available literature with respect to questionnaire may not be available, may not be sufficient. I feel that there is a deficiency, there is a lack, there is an absence of questionnaire or questions to answer my research question. If that is the case, then a researcher has to develop a questionnaire by himself. When a researcher has to develop a questionnaire by himself, then in what way, in what method one can develop it? So what we generally say scale development. So how one researcher can develop their own scale, like we say service quality. I want to measure service quality. For a service quality measurement, definitely Parashuraman tool, Parashuraman scale has been very popularly used, and actually it was being used by different researcher in the research process. So like the way I want to develop one particular scale. Otherwise, I want to develop a questionnaire which can describe the attitude of the people, perception of the people, opinion of the people, as well as intelligence of the people, emotional intelligence, or else emotional quotient, or else happiness. So these are the concepts I want to measure, I want to discuss in my research. However, whatever the term I use so far, these are the very abstract tools. They are the concept, they are the construct, which cannot be measured directly. Rather, they can be measured indirectly through some items. Items are nothing but set of questions. I want to measure happiness. Happiness of what? Happiness of attending a class. I want to see a face of the students with a lot of smile, lot of joy after the class get completes. So there are two ways I can presume. When I go to a class, when I take a class, definitely after the class, if a students are actually having a good smile, I can think that, oh, my lesson has been understood and the students have enjoyed like anything. This is one perception in which I can measure happiness of the student after attending the class. Other way around, I can also feel that since the class actually got over, the students are happy because they can go out very independently. This is the other way actually I can find out the perception. Like the perception is something different, how I'm going to define it. Therefore, instead of actually making assumption by myself, what I do generally, I may state 5 to 6 questions like after attending the class, so my knowledge is being improved. Since because of this class, my understanding has been enhanced. Since the concept which discussed in the class, which made me to think rationally, like some set of questions I can have. This set of questions are basically if a student feel that yes, because of attending the class, my understanding level has been increased. If the students are saying that is increased, strongly they agree, or if they strongly agree for this particular statement, I can feel that yes, that will give a satisfaction to them. That will make them happy to them. Even for a second question, after attending the class, the understanding level one side, knowledge level other side, my application mind is being improved. So for this statement, if a student say I do agree, then I can feel that since their application mind has been improved, definitely they will have happy. They enjoy the class and they feel that they are happy. Like the way I can identify some 5 to 6 questions which measures indirectly the happiness of the students after attending the class. Therefore, happiness after attending the class cannot be measured directly. However, they can be measured indirectly with some set of questions. Those some set of questions are basically what we call it in a factor analysis terminology, the items, and happiness is a construct. So happiness is a construct which is unobserved, which cannot be measured directly. This has to be measured through indirectly with some indicator. The some indicators are nothing but set of questions. Now, If that is my issue, in such cases, what one can do, one can use the principal component analysis and factor analysis. Again, in the factor analysis, there are two sets of factor analysis we generally do. So one is actually principal component, I already been mentioned, exploratory factor analysis. Another one is confirmatory factor analysis. Again, these two have their own purpose. We will be discussing that in the next subsequent session. Again, structural equation model. I was saying in the previously, I want to measure interdependency. If anyone has an interdependency to measure, then definitely they can go for structural equation model. In what way? The structural equation model is something different from general regression, because generally we do apply regression whenever we want to predict one with the help of other, whenever we want to explain one variable with the help of more than one variable. If that is the case, we can make use of regression. However, regression can be applicable only when we have observed variable, only when we have a variable which can be measured directly. However, some of the cases where we can measure the variable, we cannot measure the variable directly. Like I was speaking about attitude, happiness, intelligence, emotional intelligence coefficients. So all these concepts which cannot be measured directly. So what we say, they are the abstract nature and they are the construct. If you wish to measure the construct, then in such cases we can make use of structural equation model rather than actually our regression. So our regression is only for the sake of to deal the observed variable, but not the unobserved variable. Unobserved variable cannot be captured with regression. In such cases, one can make use of structural equation model. This is one thing. The second thing, again, structural equation model, which also help us to measure or to deal interdependency. So whereas regression do not actually tells us interdependency, it will tells only the dependency relationship. Y depends on X, or Y is caused by X, or X is causing Y. Like such kind of a dependency relationship can be measured with regression, but not X on Y, Y on X, again X and Y together Z. That kind of interdependency cannot be measured with regression. That can be studied, that can be analyzed with the help of structural equation model. That's the case actually nowadays. We say that structural equation model is SEM, which play a vital role in most of our research area domain, where especially in marketing, especially in HR, especially in psychology and sociology, in all those areas, the people make extensive use of structural equation model nowadays because of the purpose of because of nature of kind of question it can able to answer. So now this is a way. So this is again actually we will be discussing this. Now moving to the next concept. If your research question is depends on if a research question is discussing about some events, but events have been occurred, events have been observed chronologically. So I mean to say your variables are purely a time series kind of variables. So time series kind of variable. If a researcher having a time series kind of variables, so then what kind of a tool one can use, one can apply. Again, this is an entire special domain, entirely separate domain in research, in statistics, the time series analysis. The time series analysis where any one particular variable have been observed over a period of time. If that is the case, how can actually study a variable which is being observed over a period of time? In what purpose? Generally, let me say, I want to know about the way the population of India has been grown over a period of time. So let us start from 1901, because India is a democratic country where which has census which is being conducted pre-independence as well as post-independence without any break. Only because of COVID-19 this year it has been broken. It was not been conducted during 2020. But again, so with the time lapse, so the government of India may be conducting in actually next year. So whatever the reason, but the population of India has been rigorously and frequently and continuously has been happened once in 10 years. So now I wanted to know about how a population of India has been changed over a period of time. So I mean to say, I wanted to find out the trend of population of India. So my study is basically to identify, to study the trend in the growth of population of India, population growth rate trend. In such case, I can make use of time series analysis, trend analysis. This is one thing. The second thing, so because of COVID-19, so lockdown period, most of the share market has been actually our Indian share market, even global share market, which has spoiled like anything, which has been actually dumped to the clause due to lockdown, due to no business, due to business loss, for so many reasons. But suddenly, the perception of the individuals has been changed from investing in the share market to investing in the commodity, especially the investment towards gold has been increased. Now the gold price has been increased like anything, that it is costing more than actually what it was earlier before lockdown. Now, so my purpose here, what is the kind of the volatility in the prices of gold? Volatility, I mean to say the fluctuation in the gold price. The fluctuation in the gold price, does it significantly increased due to lockdown period, due to COVID-19? So now I want to measure the volatility of a particular share, volatility of a commodity price, volatility of any income. So like the way, if I want to measure volatility, in such case also one can use time series analysis. And other way around, if I want to predict a variable based on time also, in such case one can make use of time series analysis. In that way, so the time series analysis, which has a wider application in economics and finance, as well as in policy making purpose. So policy making purpose. Now for a moment, I will take a break for 5 minutes in such a way that reading the question. So there are a few questions has been actually has been appeared in the chat box. So one is previously the sir was actually asked me a question that it was the impact of MSME. Again, sir, actually, if you want to measure the impact on MSME, especially, again, you can measure, you can use simple correlation, a simple regression also. But depending upon the what impact you are measuring and what are the income, what are the variable you are chosen for MSME, because impact on MSME, it cannot be measurable because your statement is very weak. If you say on MSME, but you have to identify on which variable on MSME. Are you measuring the growth of MSME or income of the MSME or a profit of the MSME? So like the way you have to identify which are the variable on which you are measuring the impact. Once when you identify those variable of MSME, then definitely based upon the number of variable, so you can take up the concepts or you can take up the tools and techniques. The second type of question, the second set of question, how and what tools should be used and measure the significance of the impact of different variables after the hypothesis. This question has been not clearly mentioned, but whenever you want to measure impact, definitely either you can make use of experimental design. If you have an experimental design, you can make use of ANOVA, or else if you want to, if you are having both the variable which are metric, you can use regression. If you are having more than two variable, all the variables are again metric variable, measurable variable, you can go for multiple regression. Again, if you want to find out interdependence relationship, interdependence impact, in such case, you can make use of structural equation model. So this is the answer for Syed Kader. And another question by another participant, how influence and impact vary in case of use of statistical analysis? So a very nice question, sir, because generally there is always three words which is used in synonymously as interchangeable in a statistical aspect. One is effect, influence, and impact. In most of the cases, people do have a lot of contradiction or a lot of controversy about usage of this word. Most of the case, people say that the word impact may not be, is the most appropriate than the influence. Some people say that even effect is most appropriate rather using impact. Therefore, depending upon the kind of research question you are addressing and even the kind of journal you are using, you are picked up for the sake of submitting the research article, you can make use of the word, because generally the effect is used in the medical research, because whenever some kind of a new diagnosis happen, the effect will be there on patients. So what are the effects of serum 19 on the COVID-19 patients? So if you are measuring the effect, definitely, so in such case you can make use of effect word. Otherwise, policy impact, then definitely you can make use of a regression. So again, you have to take a call whether you're using the word impact or effect or influence. In all this case, one can use again pre and post scenario or experimental design or something else, regression analysis, even structural equation model also. Even survival and failure analysis also one can use depending upon the kind of life table analysis. Then next question, means when we are measuring the level of customer satisfaction towards banking service, which tool can be used, sir? Ma'am, again, actually, you are measuring the level of consumer satisfaction. Again, you have to define consumer satisfaction. How a consumer satisfaction can be observed, because consumer satisfaction cannot be measured with only single variable, a single item. It has a multiple abstract, multiple factors. Therefore, you have to identify the consumer satisfaction through different items through which you can measure customer satisfaction. And again, banking services, whichever the banking services on which you are measuring, so you can pick up the banking services and then customer satisfaction. First, you have to develop a scale, or you have to use a standardized scale to measure customer satisfaction. Then you can collect data with respect to banking service. So for this, again, customer satisfaction in terms of age if you are measuring, or in terms of gender you are measuring, or in terms of the kind of education you are measuring, based on which you can use inferential statistics to draw inferences. In some cases, if you want to predict something, what will be the customer satisfaction level given the set of variable, in such case you can make use of model. Then Anish Bhatt, the question was, what best statistical tools are available for qualitative research like consumer choice pattern analysis? Sir, the word best is never be appropriate in statistics, because no statistical tools are considered to be universally best, because every statistical tool have their own limitation. Therefore, a researcher has to know what are the assumptions on which the tools have been based on which. Anyhow, to analyze the qualitative research. Again, so whatever the tools we have been discussed, because they are all actually quantitative tools. Whereas nowadays in the anthropology, in the media, and even in the marketing, the people are actually have a tendency to use more of qualitative research. Like in a qualitative research, consumer choice pattern analysis. Choice pattern. What are the choice a consumer can actually, what are the choice a consumer has, and how the choice has been made by consumer depending upon his decision making, depending upon his buying attitude or buying behavior. Again, if you want to do this with the survey analysis, with the interview analysis, or with the help of questionnaire method, you have to make a call. You have to take a call, sir. If you are making a call of consumer choice pattern with the survey, then definitely you can go for quantitative analysis. If not, if you are conducting a panel discussion, I mean to say, choose 5 to 10 consumers, make a panel and pose a question to them and interview them and try to find out what made them to choose a different product and how their behavior has been changed. In such cases, you can go for content analysis. So content analysis you can do for a qualitative data research, and even you can go for metadata analysis also, because qualitative research where you can have a different set wherein you can use metadata analysis or content analysis depending upon what type of a methodology you are applying for your research question. Are you using a survey? Are you using focus group discussion or a panel discussion? So that you have to take a call by reviewing the literature, which is the most appropriate method to collect data on consumer choice. If you are using qualitative method, definitely you can use a qualitative research, or else if you are using survey, then you can go for quantitative method. Then I think there will be no other question, I think so. So demonetization to digitalization, impact on banking sector, which statistical tool we can use? Again, ma'am, Rashmi ma'am, demonetization to digitalization impact. So you are again, your statement itself has a word like impact. Impact, whenever you have an impact, again, the variable you're choosing, demonetization or digitalization on banking sector, again, depends on banking sector, on what variable you are choosing in banking sector. Are you choosing turnover? Are you choosing banking transaction? So if you choose a bank transaction, again, bank transaction can be measured. If you are choosing turnover, that can be also measured. If you are choosing profit also, that can be also measured. Again, demonetization is the proportion of digital transaction when compared to non-digital transaction, that can be also measured. In such case, you can make use of regression itself. Then I don't know the name of it. Would it correct if both parametric and non-parametric tests are applied on a single research paper on different hypotheses? Definitely, sir, because there is no fast and hard rule that we have to apply only one particular test, because that depends upon what kind of a question that you have, what kind of a question that you are addressing. If you are addressing a question where the question has a categorical variable, then you can make use of non-parametric test. Or if you are addressing even a categorical variable also, non-categorical or a quantitative variable, where the variable do not have the normality assumption has been fulfilled, in such case also you can use a non-parametric, not an issue. You can apply both, sir. Nikita ma'am, sir, I tested my reliability of a questionnaire. It shows 8.7. Most of the questions. So can I proceed with the questionnaire? Ma'am, Nikshita, ma'am, reliability will never comes as 8.7, ma'am, because I don't know whether what type of reliability you are seeing. If it is a Grandback alpha, always Grandback alpha, which comes in a decimal like, less than 1. Never it exceeds actually more than 1. Instead of a Grandback alpha, if you're using average variance extract, or else if you're using, composite reliability, then in such case, this number, I don't know which reliability you are saying, but if it is a Grandback alpha, definitely your value is wrong one. It is not accepted in research because Grandback alpha always limited to less than 1. Sayed Kader, sir, service quality measurement. Definitely, sir, you can use non-parametric also, depend upon what type of a question that you are addressing. Again, everything, no particular statistical tool can be say for this because everything depends upon the kind of research question you are addressing. Which statistical tool is good for dichotomous questions, sir? So dichotomous questions may be like a yes or no, pass and fail, this kind of a question. If it is a dichotomous question, again, for a dichotomous question, single variable, if you have, definitely you can go for a ratio, percentage ratio. But single variable, single dichotomous variable with other variable, if you want to predict, then logistic regression, linear probability model, or else you can also go for discriminant analysis. So this is the answer for Shivlil Salimat. Sorry, I don't know actually how to pronounce your name. So then Anumant sir, what kind of a statistical tool can apply to the effect of mudra? Yes, sir. Effect of mudra again, sir. So I was discussed earlier. So what variable you are choosing? So based on which you can measure, you can take a call of whether correlation or regression, sir. Even factor also you can use. Now back to the slides. Back to the slides. Now most complex scenario for almost all our researchers is that how to identify which is the appropriate tool. Again, I'm not saying actually this is the appropriate tool, but I am saying this is the appropriate tool based on the variables which you are addressing. So therefore, whenever we want to use any particular statistical tool, we have to go back to our research question, or else we have to go back to our research hypothesis, or else we have to go back to the research issue we wanted to address. Then while reading the research objective or research question, we have to identify, we have to make a mark of, can I able to classify those variable as dependent variable or independent variable? Sorry, participant, please. I wanted to classify the variable, if I possible to classify the variable as dependent or independent. So let us start with a variable dependent, a variable independent. Again, there is an operational definition. A variable which is being explained by other variable, then it is called as dependent variable. A variable which is explaining the other variable is known as independent variable. So cause and effect. So first and foremost thing, any researcher, if you want to identify which tool I have to apply for my research question, so he has to do one thing, that he has to identify what are the variable he has in his research question. Again, in the research question, which is the independent variable, which is the dependent variable. First step, he has to identify the variable, dependent DV as well as IV. After identifying the variable, again, he has to go again, whether the dependent variable or whether the independent variable that is there in my research question, is it measurable or is it non-measurable? If a variable is, let us say, dependent variable, so impact of online teaching on student learning ability. This is my research question. This is what actually I want to publish in an article, which is more appropriate in this COVID-19 as well as online education impact to measure. So impact of student learning ability due to online learning, online teaching. Now in this statement, impact of online teaching on student learning ability. Student learning ability is my dependent variable, and online teaching is independent variable. So impact of online teaching on student learning ability. Student learning ability. So how are you going to measure student learning ability? So I can measure two ways the student learning ability. So I will ask a question to a student after the class by teaching online. If a student is able to answer the question, I can say he has understood, yes. If he's not able to understood, I will say no. So like the learning ability of a student can be measured by asking a question, and if he is able to answer a question in a rightly, I can say he understood, yes. If he is unable to answer, I can say no. he couldn't able to understand. Like SRV, I can classify the student learning ability. So the student learning ability, if you are able to classify as yes or no, then that will become categorical. Otherwise, the student learning ability I can also measure in such a way that after the class, I can give some set of 10 questions for which each of the question I can assign some marks. I can circulate to them. So I can evaluate their responses and I can evaluate it. I can grade them out of 10 marks, how many marks they are able to score. If they're scoring good marks, above the average, above 50%, yes, their learning ability has been improved or the learning ability is actually good enough, even in the online teaching, I can say. If their learning ability in terms of marks, if it is less than 50, then I can say that the impact of online teaching is not actually up to the mark. Like the way learning ability of a student can also be measured by using numbers. That is what we say quantitative measurement. Like whichever the variable a researcher is intended to study, that variable can be classified into so two ways. One is either categorical, either quantitative. If a researcher is able to classify them into quantitative or a qualitative, so let him classify depending upon in his way of operational definition of a variable. Once if he is able to define or able to classify them into categorical or quantitative, again in which he has to find out how many groups are there, how many independent, how many variables are there. If it is only one dependent variable, if there is a more than one dependent variable. Again, if it is a categorically has been classified, if there are only two categories like is understood yes or no, then only two categories. If there are more than two categories like partially understood, he understood yes, he did not understood partially, he is saying actually little bit of 50% answer yes, 50% answer is wrong, then partially right. So there are more than two categories. If there are more than two categories, so we can make use of these tools. So now I've been described about quantitative dependent variable, like under dependent variable. So how operationally you are measuring dependent variable, whether you are measuring the variable in a categorically or in a quantitatively. Again, if you are measuring quality categorically, how many groups you have in your dependent variable. If it is two groups, you can pick these tools. Again, if there are more than two groups, you can pick this group or pick these tools. If not, if your dependent variable itself is a quantitative, if it is only one single quantity variable, you can pick these tools. Or if it is more than one dependent variable, all are quantitative, then you can pick this variable or pick these tools. Now, again, this is not actually specific. This is not actually exactly appropriate, because if I say one dependent variable, again under one dependent variable there are so many tools. Which tools is appropriate? Then you have to come back to independent variable this side. So you have to come over here in the independent variable, because in your research objective or in research hypothesis, you will be having dependent as an independent variable. So now after identifying the dependent variable, and again whether the dependent variables are categorical or quantitative, again whether there are two groups or more than two groups, whether they are one or more than one, after having lot of clarity about dependent variable, move towards independent variable. Again, while answering for independent variable also, you go as per dependent variable, like as you did for dependent variable, like whether your independent variable is also quantitative or qualitative. I mean to say categorical. Before independent variable, like I said, impact of online teaching. Again, impact of online teaching on student learning ability. Student learning ability is a dependent variable. Online teaching. Again, online teaching is a variable I chosen. The online teaching, what you have defined or what the variable you have been mentioned, how are you going to measure? How are you going to give an operational definition for online teaching? How are you measuring it? How are you going to capturing in a materialistic form? Again, so I will ask some set of questions to a teacher. I have taken some set of questions to a student, teachers, whether the teachers are taught online teaching or offline teaching. If students say that I have done online teaching, so because of online teaching, this is the marks of the students. I have done offline teaching, because of offline teaching, the students have scored like this. Like offline and online teaching, which can be measured, like what is the number of faculties who have done online teaching and who have done offline teaching. So again, the online and offline can be classified in terms of numbers. You can measure in terms of numbers, then that will become quantitative. If not, you say yes or no, again it will become categorical variable. So as you did for a dependent variable, for independent variable also, you can classify them into quantitative, qualitative. Again, under quantitative, how many independent variable you have? Again, under categorical variable, how many groups that you have? Based on which you can pick the tools. But one thing that we have to remember over here, that is, under independent variable, you will be having one more concept like covariate. So this covariate did not appear in the dependent variable list. Whereas in the independent variable list, the word covariate, which has appeared here, the covariate is, what does it mean? Because whenever we do social science research, I will say impact of learning ability, impact of online teaching on learning ability. If I say impact of learning ability, impact of online teaching on learning ability of a student, I always say, or I always actually, whatever I make a claim that assume that the student have scored 100 out of 100. Out of 5 students, 4 students were scored out of 100 out of 100. After online teaching, they actually get into. Now I will claim that online teaching is effective. Would it be right or wrong? That is what actually I want to discuss in the research discussion part. When I say actually 100, for 4 out of 5 have scored 100 out of 100, 100 out of 100, whatever students have scored, that is not only because of online teaching, because the score has been influenced by several other variables. But all those several other variables, extraneous variable, so it is beyond the control of the researcher to control, because most of the time the researcher will be manipulating only one variable which is intended to study. So I mean to say a researcher is intended to study a variable for which he can manipulate with some other variable, but he cannot control each and every variable which do have an impact of the impact on dependent variable. So some cases our variable will also make sense to take other variable also. I mean to say student learning ability, IQ, and as well as teaching method. The teaching method has impact on student learning ability. However, student learning ability is also influenced by IQ. But I cannot have a control over the IQ of the students because the students are being given randomly to me in my class. So I will be having different set of students who are having different levels of IQ. So I cannot control the IQ of the students. Therefore, while doing research, what one can do, so the IQ also have an impact on learning ability, but the impact of IQ can be nullified with the concept of covariate. That's where actually the concept of COVA, UNCOVA, MUNCOVA, which comes into picture. Therefore, whenever you have a variable which is said to be covariate, which is expected to have an influence on different variable, you want to control this effect, then we can use the concept called UNCOVA or ANOVA. Now, in this way, I've been described about the title of the table, the column title, and again inner part of the columns, again row, inner part of the row. Now coming to the cells. So what this cells basically meant to. Now let me pick one or two examples through which I will explain what tool, how you can actually read and understand this particular tool so that you can carry these tools so for your research study. Let me pick one-way ANOVA. So one of the simplest one. One-way ANOVA is a statistical tool which is appropriate to study whenever our dependent variable is quantitative and whenever our dependent variable is only one dependent variable. So in this way, we have to read this. One-way ANOVA is most appropriate tool in the case when we have only one dependent variable which is quantitative, as well as this is appropriate whenever our independent variable is categorical, which is having two or more than two groups. This is what ANOVA can be applied. This is a case where ANOVA can be applied. So ANOVA can be applied when our independent variable is a qualitative variable which must have more than two categories, and our dependent variable is a quantitative which is only one. So now, we'll back to explanation of this. I think that the whiteboard is visible. Whiteboard is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah. So now we are making use of ANOVA. So when ANOVA can be applied. So ANOVA can be applied. So ANOVA can be applied in the case our dependent variable is a function of independent variable, where my independent variable, or whatever my dependent variable or independent variable I chosen, that variable dv, dependent variable, is quantitative. Dependent variable is a quantitative and independent variable is a qualitative. So where this independent variable, qualitative variable, it must have more than two groups or more than two groups. So now for this, one of the best example, income is a function of education qualification. Now, education qualification I have classified into three groups, like less than SLC or below SLC, or like something like primary level, the secondary level, and higher level. Higher level is includes graduation, mostly graduation as well as master post graduation. Secondary level, which include till 12th standard to 10th standard, high school to 12th standard, and primary level, so below 7th standard. So in that way, I have been classified education level into three groups. Higher level. Now, it is always expected that income of the people depends upon their education qualification. The people with higher income, they do have higher income. People with higher education level, they do have higher income. The people with the low education, they do have a lower income. This is what actually in a common sense one can observe. Now I want to measure, I want to conclude, does income of the people who are with a primary level, secondary level, and higher education level differ significantly? The income of this people, primary level, income of this people, secondary level, income of higher level. Does all are having same level of income? Does all are having different levels of income? I want to say, if all are, I mean to say the people with the primary level education, the people with secondary level of education, people with higher level of education. If all three groups level of education, if they do have a same level of income, then my conclusion that education qualification in my study do not impact in income, because people with the different levels of income are having almost similar set of income, similar level of income. Instead of that, the people with the primary level of education, secondary level of education, and higher level of education, if they do have a different level of income, their income level differs significantly, then I say that as education qualification, which is having impact on income. So there is an impact of education on the income of the people. Like now, here education qualification, how I classify education qualification, which was classified as education qualification, which was classified as a categorical, like a primary level, secondary level, higher level, which is not measured, but which is being categorized into three groups: primary level, secondary level, higher level. Whereas income is a dependent variable, quantity variable, which is being classified as income, which is measured like I can measure income like 1,000 rupee, 10,000 rupee, 20,000 rupees. So now income is measured variable and education qualification is unmeasured variable. This is quantitative, this is qualitative. Again, in this qualitative, we have more than two groups. So therefore, in this case, we can use our ANOVA. So this is actually the explanation for this concept of table. One way ANOVA is most appropriate. I think so the slide is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah, one way ANOVA is most appropriate in the case when the independent variable is categorical, which is having two or more than groups, and dependent variable is quantitative. You should have only one dependent variable. In this way, you can use one way ANOVA. So from the participant side, so you can just drop me one or two messages so that are you able to understand this explanation about how to pick a tool? Can you be able to? Yeah, I'm getting a positive response. Yes, they are able to understand. Now again, let me take one more example from one of the cells so that I will be explaining again, so that you will be having more clarity, so that you can use this table for sake of picking the tool which is most appropriate whenever you have a different type of variables and different set of category and the nature of the variable. Now, in this case, again, let me move to the next. Let me take any one of the cell. Let us say ANCOVA. When I can use ANCOVA? When is actually one-way ANCOVA is most appropriate. Where one-way ANCOVA is most appropriate, again, when you have a one dependent variable, which is as like ANOVA, it is a purely quantitative, whereas your one-way ANCOVA should have independent variable, which is a categorical in nature, one independent variable, which is categorical. Along with this, it should also have covariate. What does it mean by covariate? So now let us say one study, let us take an example. The example will be that the labor force participation. I mean to say, some people willingly they wish to work because they want to make their livelihood. So they go and actually work. They wish to go for working. But some people, even if you have a job also, they do not wish to work because they feel that actually, so for me actually income is not a constraint. So because they may be having a very well amount of wealth, so that they feel that actually, so willingness they do not show to work. So whether a person actually do work or do not work, that depends upon their education qualification, as I discussed earlier, and also that depends upon their level of wealth. If a person from high family, if the person from actually very rich family, even if you offer a job to work, you do not wish to work because you want to go for doing a business. So his willingness to work not only depends upon his education, but also it depends upon his level of wealth. Now, wealth is measurable. Wealth is measurable. So what amount of wealth a person has, which can be converted either in a monetary form, either in a other asset form, and which can be measurable because asset can be measurable. Now, if that is the case, now what I want to say, so in the previous example, we said education qualification is influences the income of a person. But along with education, wealth is also influences the person income ability. Because even though the person is actually not working, he may earn money. The person, even though he earn money, he do work, he may not be actually earning good money because he do not have any other support. Therefore, now in that case, so I want to control the effect of wealth. So by controlling the effect of wealth, does education qualification affects the income? But again, here we have an issue. What is the issue? Operational definition. Because most of the case, what happens? The people use income as a proxy for wealth also. So therefore, while defining this, you should be very careful because most of the case actually income and wealth may not be taken into consideration together because they do have a multi-correlate issue. That is what actually we learn in regression. But here we are taking income, wealth, as well as education qualification. But I want to control the effect of income, control the effect of wealth. Whenever you want to control the effect of wealth, in such cases, we can use for ANCOVA. Like one way ANCOVA is so most suitable or appropriate tool whenever our quantitative variable is one dependent variable and whenever our independent variable is a qualitative and with covariate. Covariate, I mean to say a variable, a concomitant variable I want to control. That's where actually we can use one way ANCOVA. Like the way we can pick the each and every tool by looking into this particular table. So this particular table, which will be very handy to identify yourself because it is empowering you to identify which is appropriate tool by looking into this and by having clarity about it. Now, so with this, let us go to the next. Yeah. I hope so. Actually, this slide is much elaborative because rather having in a tabular form, this has actually probing question form, so that this set of a question probing, so it will give you more clarity so that you can able to understand which is the most appropriate tool when you have a different type of question and different type of variables and different nature of variables. So now I will take 5 minutes so that some question from your side. So if you have any questions, so I can answer. Otherwise, I can finish it off. So remaining, even actually, I have still 11 more slides I have. I need to finish it off because the time is now 3:45. So Chaitra ma'am, she has given me only a time for 4 o'clock. So I will extend for 5 to 10 minutes with your kind permission, ma'am. So then I will finish it off. Is it okay, ma'am, Chaitra ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sure, ma'am. From participant side, any queries? Any more queries? If you do not have a query, then I will continue with the explanation. Yes, fine. Now, sir, dear sir, is covariate and control variable the same? Sir, control variable and covariate variable, again, it depends upon how you are operationally defining. because never actually what we say generally, a variable for which I want to control, a variable I want to actually remove the effect of it. When you choose a variable as a control variable, in such case you will say it is a covariable. I mean to say one variable go move with other variable. But in a condition, I mean to say in a mediation and moderation variable, we say control variable is something else. There also we use concept of ANOVA in extensively, but in a model building process. Yes. Now back to the decision making tree. So how we can make use of this tree to identify which is the most appropriate statistical techniques we can make use in our study. So always I started by saying that we must start with always research question. What is my research question? And after that, I should be able to move towards to identify which is my dependent variable, which is my independent variable. And along with that, whether my independent variable, whether my dependent variable, whether I do have one variable, or whether the variables are qualitative or quantitative, whether they have categorical variable, like the way you have to pose a question by yourself. Again, please remember, whenever you want to identify a particular tool which is appropriate for your research question, please make sure that your research question is having a lot of clarity to you. Research question, and after reading the research question, move towards which is the dependent variable in your research question and which is the independent variable in your research question, and followed by what is the number of dependent variable you have in your research question, what is the number of independent variable you have in your research question, and along with that, what is the nature of dependent variable and nature of independent variable. Here I mean to say nature, I mean to say type is nothing but whether it is a quantitative or qualitative. And after that, do you have any variable whose control you want to control or whose effect has been nullified? Then you have to identify whether I do have any covariate in my research question or in my research objective. If you have a covariate, then that also you have to identify. After that, let us move to the what type of research question. Then pick the tools. Now let us go. My research question is actually studying the impact, studying the relationship between the variables. If you want to go for studying the relationship between variable, so I said, actually I mentioned earlier, you can go for simple correlation, simple regression, multiple regression, path analysis. These are the tools which mitigates, which help us, which is our handy for answering the research question of degree of relationship. But among this, which is most appropriate? Again, to answer this, you have to fill the cells which is in between this. What are the cells? So degree of relationship I want to study, but in my research question, I have only one quantity variable. I mean to say I have income. Again, my research question, I have number of years studied. Again, that is also quantitative because number of years, if I study 10 till 10th standard, I can say 10 years I studied. If I done graduation, then I can say 15 years I studied. If I say that I have done post graduation, then 17 years of education. Like education in terms of number of years, it is quantitative. And income, it is quantitative. So your dependent variable is also quantitative, independent variable is also quantitative, and you have taken only one variable, then in such case, you can use bivariate correlation. I mean to say Karl Pearson correlation coefficient. So this you can use. Along with that, if you want to measure the impact also, along with the relationship, if you want to measure impact, then make use of regression. So that correlation and regression, which is a handy statistical tool one can use to answer the degree of relationship between two variables. One is dependent, one is independent, and both are quantitative. So your goal of analysis, which fulfills like determining the relationship as well as effect or prediction. So this is the way you can understand this. Then moving towards in this way. So my research question is the degree of relationship only. However, my dependent variable is not only one. My dependent variable is only one, whereas my independent variable is more than one. Why? Because the income of an individual not only depends upon number of years of education is completed. Income also depends upon richness of a person. I mean to say whether the person actually having high social status or a low social status. The social status can be measured. Again, let us assume that it is also measured variable. We have a social index by using, we have measured social level of social index. If you have a social social status index, then your independent variable is again 2, or you can also add one more variable, more than 1, more than 2. That is also quantitative. If any researcher having a research question wherein the independent variable is more than 2, 2 or more than 2, all are measurable variable. Dependent is only 1, it is also measurable. In such case, we can make use of multiple regression. Multiple regression. Now, moving towards now, degree of relationship, whereas I will change. My dependent variable is not only 1, it is 1 or more than 1. Again, independent variable is also 2 or more than 2. In such case, we can make use of path analysis. Path analysis is nothing but diagrammatically that we are measuring the relationship between the variable where your independent and dependent both are more than 1. More than 1. And also through path diagram, one can study interdependency also. I mean to say, X causes Y, Y again causes X, between, sorry, X causes Y, again Y causes Z, again Z causes X. Like if you have a circular kind of triangular shape of a relationship, if you want to measure, in such cases, one can make use of path analysis. So path analysis is nothing but diagrammatic way of analyzing the or studying the causal relationship between variable where you may be having, whether you may be having a more than one dependent variable or more than one independent variable and quantitatively. In such cases, you can make use of path analysis. Now, this is where actually you can make use of which is the most appropriate tool. So to address your research question, by using this tool, you can able to meet this goal of your analysis. Now, moving to the next one. So rather group differences. So this has already been discussed. I think that no need to give again elaborate explanation because I've been already told about when to use ONE-ANOVA, when to use ANCOVA like that. The same way, but instead of having tabular way, I have in a diagrammatic way. So I think that this can be self-understood because been already explained. Now this also actually been explained, but let me add some more things to this because in the previous slide I couldn't actually explain much about it. So now in the regression, so we discussed about Y and X. Y is quantitative, X is also quantitative. So now X has influence on Y, both are measurable variable, then we use simple regression. So now a question arises, most of the case what happens, a researcher wants to measure influenced by, Y is influenced by several variables like X and Z. Let us actually not bother about X and Z. X can be quantitative or qualitative. Z can be quantitative or qualitative. But my concern is now about Y. If Y is quantitative, we make use of regression. But my Y is not quantitative. If my Y is qualitative. So now what is the case example? In a classroom, if I take students, they can pass the exam, they can fail the exam. They can perform well in the exam, they can perform poor in the exam. So that I can classify the student based on the result into pass or fail. So pass or fail is not measured, it is classified. So the students are being classified into two groups, pass student and failed student. Now I will be probing a question, or I'm just giving an instrument to the students group which have been performed well in the exam or passed the exam. Like I may be having some set of question. What a set of question? I have measured their IQ, and followed by second question, how many hours in a day they studied, and third question, what is their attendance percentage, and fourth question, what is their marks in their all internal test, cumulative assessment test. Like all these set of questions I do have. These are all actually independent variable which influences whether the students will be able to pass or fail the exam. A student who read more, the student who attend all internal tests, the student actually have high IQ, definitely he perform well in the exam, he passed the exam. So now I want to identify whether a student given this set of attributes, given these are the set of attributes, given this set of attributes, will he able to pass, will he able to fail? So let us say a student who to take an admission. If a student coming to a school to take an admission, as a teacher, as a head of the institute, he want to maintain the reputation of the institution also, because he cannot take admission of all the students. The student do not actually perform well in the exam because they may not be studying at all. They may not be actually having a good IQ, whatever the reason. Let me not actually discuss controversially. Let us say in a very generic way, the student with at least average or above average IQ, the student at least regularly do have a habit of reading habit. The student do have a attitude to attend the internal test. The student do have making notes and everything. All the students, if they come to admission, definitely I can take the admission, and I can also actually feel that the student will pass. So given the set of attributes, knowing the set of attributes, will a student will pass the exam or fail the exam? Like the way I want to classify. So if my purpose of a research question is classification, in such cases, one can use discriminant analysis, or else one can use logistic regression. So the discriminant and logistic regression both are statistical tools which help us to classify the given variable into two or more than two groups. So student can be classified into pass or fail depending upon these attributes. Here pass or fail is a qualitative variable. Several attributes are dependent or independent. So several attributes are quantitative or qualitative. So like the way, if our purpose is prediction or classification, in such cases, one can make use of logistic regression and discriminant analysis. Then moving towards the next one. The structure. So I will give more space for this now because I have to elaborate this factor analysis and principal component analysis. So I was discussing this definitely because this is a more vital statistical concept that we use very extensively nowadays in psychology and education and marketing. So in most of the field, the structure. So every researcher wants to measure something, wants to discuss something, where something, if it is already standardized, then there is no need. He can make use of the same structurized questionnaire and he can collect data, he can do analysis. But sometimes what happens, the researcher do not have any particular scale to measure. So in such case, he has to develop himself. He has to develop a questionnaire. Now, when a researcher wants to develop a questionnaire, a scaled questionnaire, I meant to say like a Likert scale, 1 to 5 scale, strongly disagree to strongly agree, or very happy to very unhappy, like this kind of a scale question. If you want to develop a scale question, in such cases, how to develop a scale? Because whenever a researcher wishes to develop a scale, he will be having several questions, he will be having several issues, he has to answer all those issues because first and foremost thing, he has to identify what variable he wants to observe, what variable he wants to measure. Am I measuring happiness? Am I measuring, the degree of a depression? So what type of abstractness I am trying to measure through my scale? What is the purpose of my scale to develop? So like the factor you have to identify. And as I said earlier, the factor cannot be measured, the construct cannot be measured directly, which can be observed indirectly with some indicator. I can say a particular student in my class, he may be depressed. How can I say the student is depressed? Because I can read his face. I can read her interaction in the class. I can see her interaction with her friends. Because of this, I can say that why the student is very dull in the class, why the student actually seems to be depressed. So like the way I can say, I can measure or I can observe her depression with some indicator, like her involvement in the classroom, her involvement with the teacher, or with learning, her involvement, her interact with her friends. So like that, I can have some set of indicator. With those set of indicator, I can say whether student is active or inactive, whether the student is depressed or non-depressed. Like the way I can measure. So that most of the case, if a researcher purpose is to explore the hidden structure in the data, I mean to say exploring. I mean to say you are exploring something in the data and you are trying to make a structure of the data. So data reduction process or data structure identification you are trying to do. If a purpose of any researcher is to explore the data reduction or to explore the data dimensions, then one can use exploratory factor analysis. So again, in a factor analysis, I'm discussing exploratory factor analysis. The exploratory factor analysis, EFA exploratory factor analysis, one can make use whenever he wants to explore the data structure in the collected data. So the dimension reduction, so exploratory factor analysis. This is the one thing. Where happens, the researcher can instead of developing its own scale, what he can do, he can use some already developed or already invented scales. If he wants to use already invented scale, but the invented scale has been developed because to meet some purpose has been stated by the researcher, the earlier researcher, the founder, discoverer, inventor. But I may be using the same set of questionnaire, but I have to think whether that questionnaire is more suitable for me, even though I am measuring the same thing, but may not be more suitable because the social context is something different. Because I am using the tools which is developed by USA researchers, they are used for measuring the IQ. The way the IQ is measured in USA, the tools which is used to measure IQ in USA may not be appropriate to measure the IQ of the Indians because the social context may be something different. The cultural difference will be something different. The ability of a people will be something different depending upon the race. Therefore, I need to find out whether the questionnaire which is being developed by the USA researcher to measure the IQ, will it be suitable as it is? I can use, shall I use, or do I need to make some modification? Or is it valid? Is it reliable to use in my research? So like I want to confirm whether that particular IQ proposed theory can be useful or can be applicable in my social context of Indian students or Indian students IQ to measure. In such cases, rather developing the questionnaire, I am using the available ready-made questionnaire, but I am confirming whether it is valid to my study, whether my study is actually supporting that particular theory. So confirmation of existing theory or confirmation of existing hypothesis. So if your purpose is not to just to explore the data or data pattern or data structure, rather to confirming the existing theory or to testing the existing hypothesis, in such case, instead of EFA, we will use CFA, confirmatory factor analysis, CFA. So that there are two concepts we use. One is EFA, one is CFA. CFA, confirmatory factor analysis, where we use this one to confirm whether existing theory is justifiable or valuable with my data, or whether my data actually supports the existing theory or not. Like the way you are testing the hypothesis, testing the theory. In such case, we can use confirmatory factor analysis. Therefore, whenever we use confirmatory factor analysis, in that case scenario, we have to test the validity and reliability. But there are different statistical tools and concepts to test the face validity and concurrent validity, discriminant validity, and even composite reliability. There are many things that we have to do. Then only I can make use of further analysis, because factor analysis, whether it is exploratory, whether it is a confirmatory, both are not the end, they are the means of analysis, because we use them in a preliminary stage based on which further other statistical tool will be used to analyze our data. Therefore, they are not the end, they are the means. That's what actually every researcher should remember. So in this way, factor analysis, whether it is exploratory or confirmatory, both which help us to identify the research question or identify data structure, or to confirm the existing theory or hypothesis. So that's where actually we make use of our exploratory factor analysis. These are the way where researcher can actually make use of different tools and techniques, so that for his research he can make use of all this. Now this is the same thing actually have been discussed, so but in a lucid way, so that one can have a clarity. And one slide I'm been using here, how to select an appropriate method, but this will not explain, because you can take a slide and you can read it, because this has already been explained to you. So that I have been actually already narrated here how to take a research question, and how to identify the variables, and how to classify the variable into independent and dependent. Again, among the independent dependent, so which is measurable, which is non-measurable, and if you have a covariate, how to identify. So research question and identifying the variable and classifying them as independent, dependent, and covariate. And then next, again, whether the dependent, independent, quantitative, qualitative. After this, then using the table previously I discussed, and which tool I can apply. Like I have been given this 3 slides. So the 3 slides, if you read once with the help of the previous slide number 8, you can easily identify which of the statistical tool is most appropriate for my research question, if my research question is something like in this way. So first identifying the variables, then followed by the classify them as a dependent, independent, and then followed by, so whether the dependent and independent, which is our classification of a 1 or 2 or more than 2, whether they are quantitative, qualitative, and then followed by using the slide number 8, you just pick the variable or pick the choose which is most appropriate. Now, this is where actually our presentation will end. But now I will go with the one question, basic thing. So the basic will be something like one of the research question. Yeah, I think that word is visible. Yeah,
No,
MS Word
sir.
for it.
No, sir.
1 minute. Now is it visible, ma?
No, sir.
Is it not visible? I don't
It
know
is not
actually what is the
visible.
problem. Now is it okay?
No, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Now, let us take one small case example, because I don't actually whether all of you will be having an SPSS or not, because I can do this also in MS Excel, but because the data has been entered in SPSS, so that I think that to save the time, I will use directly SPSS so that how a research question can be answered and it can be addressed. Now, by using this profile b.sav is nothing but extension of SPSS file, job satisfaction and is life exciting or dull. So I mean to say, there are two variables I am trying to connect. Job satisfaction, and followed by is a life is. Now, sorry, job satisfaction and is life exciting or dull? So there are two questions actually I'm connecting. The people who are enjoying their job, the people who feel that what the job they're doing, they're satisfied. And definitely they feel that their life is also actually exciting to them, because job satisfaction and the life excitement so do have some amount of correlation, because theoretically as well as with the common sense also we can say that. So the people who enjoy life, who feel their life is exciting, because if they do have a satisfaction from job also, workplace also, and as a family. For a moment actually I'm not just I'm not incorporating family, family life enjoyment or family life satisfaction. Let us keep away the family life satisfaction. Let us take only a job. So, is the life is exciting? Yes or no? Or if a life is dull to you? And are you enjoying your job? So I mean to say job satisfaction. So that there are two variables I'm trying to answer: job satisfaction and is life is exciting to you, or if a life is dull to you. This is the research question I want to answer. So now to me, how I have measured job satisfaction, how I measure is a life is exciting or dull. So to this, I am using a data file called profile b.sav. Profile b.sav. I think the SPSS is the screen is visible.
No, sir. It is not visible. Yes, sir.
SPSS. Now is
Yes.
visible, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
For all the participants. Is it visible
No,
now?
sir.
It's gone.
No, sir. It's gone.
Now, is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
SPSS.
Now it is
Yeah.
visible. Yes, sir.
Now, so the kind of variable I chosen here, job satisfaction as well as life exciting to you. This is the one thing actually I'm trying to answer from my research question. So through my research question. Now, job satisfaction. So let us find out the job satisfaction, how the job satisfaction has been measured. Here, satisfaction, job satisfaction. Job satisfaction is a variable which is measured by using Likert scale, like 1 to 5 scale, 1 to 4 scale. Like if anyone actually who say that his life is job is highly satisfied, he say 1, moderately satisfied 2, little bit satisfied 3, very dissatisfied 4. And also whenever we go for social science data, so where in the field study, some of the people they say that we are unable to answer, we don't know, or I'm unwilling to answer, so no answer, don't know, as well as some people say that since I am doing my own business, it is not applicable to me. So like some people also say that that is not applicable. Like the way it has been quoted with 0, not applicable if it is 0. If it is 8, don't know. If it is 9, is no answer. This is a kind of scaling. Again, now with the number, so let us say with a Likert scale, we are trying to measure the job satisfaction. So job satisfaction is measured with scale. So to that, actually one more question we are linking that. So whether life is exciting to you, is life is exciting to you or not? Now, if life is exciting to you, is life is exciting to you, or if is a life is dull to you? Again, this is also a question. Is also a question where it is also numerically measured. A person say that his life is very dull, so it is a 1, a routine life, 2, exciting to him, 3, don't know, 8, and no answer 9, and 0 is not applicable. Like here, whichever the variable I chosen, like a job satisfaction and his life is exciting or dull, both are have been converted into numerically the Likert scale. So I mean to say job satisfaction and as a life is dull or exciting, both variable which is converted numerically and we are trying to measure through Likert scale. Now, 2 variables and I want to find out what type of analysis I can do for this. Since my purpose is here, just for sake of presentation now, I'm taking my purpose here to find whether there is a connection between these two. The people who are having higher job satisfaction, is their life is exciting to them. The people with a low job satisfaction, do they have a life as a dull? So I mean to say job satisfaction, whether it is having impact on life exciting or dull. So that kind of a connection I wanted to find out. Therefore, first and foremost thing what I do actually, I will just find out the degree of relationship between them. So what is the kind of relationship exists between job satisfaction and exciting or dullness of the life. So now to do this simple correlation, because this is not a practical session that we are not intended to do, we are just intended to do only the theoretical part. Therefore, just for sake of to enrich you that I have taken one simple example. It is not entire part of statistical analysis. Now, so in our SPSS, almost all statistical tools are actually available under Analyze menu. So where you can see the Analyze menu, if you click over there, so there you can find correlate. So like correlate and bivariate. As I was discussing, the correlate is a statistical tool or a statistical tool we use for sake of measuring the relationship between the two variables. So you just click on covariate, bivariate, and choose whichever variable you want to find relationship. Like for my purpose, I am just taking the variable job satisfaction and his life is exciting or dull. These two variables in which I want to find the relationship. Select the two variable and drop on the variable list. And if you want to do further analysis, you can take option and other bootstrap method. So let us not take about all this option right now. Just I want correlation coefficient by using Carl Pearson method, linear correlation. Then just move on to OK button. Now from this, what is the conclusion I'm drawing? So the correlation matrix table, which gives us the kind of relationship between job satisfaction and life is exciting. Now, we always know that the correlation matrix always is symmetric. I mean to say half diagonal values are one and the same. So whatever the values holds true here, the same value will appear also, because that is a kind of relation between two variables interchangeably. So forget about the principal diagonal. I mean to say the main diagonal, we have to ignore it, because that is nothing but the relationship between this with same variable. Same variable with same variable will always having perfect positive correlation. So we always ignore the diagonal cells. We'll take always off diagonal variables. So Again, off diagonal variables, off diagonal cells will having identical values. Let us take either this or this because both gives the same values. Now here, is life exciting or dull? This one, job satisfaction. This row and this column, both are intersecting at this. So now this is the degree of relationship between these two variables. The relationship, the correlation is negative. So I mean to say there is a negative correlation between job satisfaction and excitedness or dullness of a life. So now that is the one thing. And after this, we have to see whether do we have a star mark or not. If you do have a star mark, it means that there is a significant relationship. Again here, for this, we have a double star. The double star indicates that there is a significant correlation in job satisfaction and is life exciting or not at one level, at 1% level of significance. So now the question is, the correlation has become negative. So negative in what sense? Now I need to connect the theory, because statistics is only meant for actually empirical evidence. But whatever empirical evidence you have done by applying tools and techniques, you have to discuss in your result part or in your discussion part. Whenever we do discussion part, whenever do discussion as well as the result part, where we have to connect the theory, because does it holds theoretically? Does it actually incompatible with theory, or it is a contrast with the theory, controversial with the theory? Generally, the people with high job satisfaction or people with job satisfaction, they feel that the life is also dull, or whether the life is also exciting to them or not. Now, whenever we get answer, definitely you don't take the things as it is, rather try to give some literature, some other literature or theory to evident your results which you obtain by applying statistical tool. That's the reason actually I wanted to say, whatever result you will get, you don't feel actually the result, whatever you done is ultimate, or that is the end of the part of your analysis. After doing your statistical analysis, you have to write interpretation to this, and also you have to discuss this result in the discussion part. While discussing in the result part, you have to give some theoretical justification, some research evidence, whether it is compatible or whether it is a controversial. If it is compatible, which are the source through which you can give citation, I can support. If it is controversial, and you have to give support for it is a controversial against to those existing literature, like the way you have to write your discussion part. This is where actually we have briefly explained in a nutshell about the different statistical tool or appropriate tool for your research question. Now, the session is open to the discussion. I hope actually the organizer can actually turn off their mics, so if they have any queries, they can post directly to voice, so I can able to interact with them.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Participants can unmute themselves and they may ask questions. They can ask questions.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Manjunath sir. Good evening, sir. Manjunath sir. Audible?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I am audible?
Audible, sir.
Manjunath sir, first of all, congratulations to you. You have given a very good presentation, sir. So,
Thank you, sir.
my name is Dr. Sheikh Karim. I am also a statistician and a management faculty.
Nice to
Small
meet you,
name,
sir. Yes, sir.
So, during ANOVA, just one for our consumption, sir, during
Yes,
ANOVA,
sir.
for example, if there are 3-4 groups are there, sir.
Yes, sir.
Independent variable, one independent variable, and there are more than 3 groups are there. Education.
Yes,
So
sir.
if you are most of the real data, the number of observations will be, the variation will be very high. For example, intermediate 200 number may be there. Then degree you may get some 90 to 40 like that one. Higher you may get 40, 50. So one group may have 200, 300. Another group may have 100. Another group may have only 40, 50.
Yes, sir.
And second is, suppose if Levin's test, because we
Yes,
have a
sir.
statistician, we will look minutely.
Homogeneity. Sir.
Homogeneity, Levin test,
Yes,
how
sir.
much it impacts on which one? The results.
Yes, sir. So you mean to say that you want a clarification about the
Yes. Just
unequal
our
sample size?
discussion, for
Yes, sir.
example, groups.
If a sample is unequal, definitely what we generally do actually, we have ANOVA where the ANOVA F value which will be altered by unequal sample size. That is the one thing, because ANOVA you have a bootstrap option that you have. By using bootstrap option also, if the sample size are actually varying, you can use that F value. And also if the variances are not equal, if their variances are unequal, is it audible?
Yes, sir, audible.
If a variance is unequal, again, before doing ANOVA, what we can do, we can test whether the variance is actually equal or unequal by using Leven's test. After that, we can use F value if it is equal variance, and modified F value, which is if our groups are unequal. So in ANOVA, it is a very flexible way. The inventors or researchers who have developed different part of ANOVA where you can mitigate if the samples are unequal, you can mitigate the ANOVA if variances are equal or unequal. So it will have all other options. SP is actually good for it because it have all other rest of whatever the options are there, you are using. All are actually incorporated in ANOVA, sir. You can use that, but you have to go in detail about equal variance, unequal variance, as well as equal observation, unequal observations. Yeah, sir. Please, sir. Then anybody else? And one question I could see here, sir, will you share PPT? Definitely, sir. I do share PPT, sir. No issue. So everything the PPT will be shared to all of you, sir. Yes, please.
Can you hear, sir? I'm Nikshita.
Yeah, ma'am. Nikshita, ma'am. Tell me, ma'am, please, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. That time I told value, it was wrong, sir. Actually, 0.87. I told 8.7.
Sorry, I think that while typing it has made a mistake, I guess. Typing mistake. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Then
your voice
test
is
that
freezing,
only,
yeah.
sir. Hello, Crow. Hello.
Ma'am, your voice is freezing.
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, please continue. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, sir. Then can I proceed with that questionnaire, sir?
Ma'am, I don't
with
know
that
about,
value.
I don't know the background of your reliability, because you are saying only about reliability, but you did not mention anything about validity. That's part number one. Part number two, are you used any kind of the questionnaire which is already existing, the standardized questionnaire, or are you using your own questionnaire that you are not mentioning in your questionnaire?
No, based on the literature review only I developed, sir. Like already.
You mean to say that you are using structured questionnaire?
Yeah, structured questionnaire.
If you are using structured questionnaire, not just only the Granbach alpha, that not only the sole purpose, even along with Granbach alpha, you have to use other test of reliability as well as test of validity, ma'am.
Okay, sir.
You have to use other test of reliability, as I was speaking about composite reliability, average variance extract, as well as in terms of discriminating validity, converging validity, phase validity, nomological validity. You have to use a test of validity as a test of reliability. Then only you can proceed further to do your analysis. Otherwise, it may not be accepted in a scholarly article, ma'am. Highly peer reviewed article, they may not accept unless you have used both reliability and validity extensively. Then
okay, sir.
Else?
One more question.
Yeah, ma'am. Please, ma'am. Proceed, ma'am.
Study title is Impact of Destination Image on Tourist Satisfaction and Destination Loyalty.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Fine, ma'am.
Can I apply structural equation model, sir?
Definitely, ma'am. Because you have taken two concepts where you have an interdependency relationship.
Yeah, sir.
Because a destination as well as satisfaction. So fine, you can use a structural equation by taking all three variables together in a path diagram, or else you can break them, because I don't know the way that you are raising your research question, or raise your research question. If you can split into two different parts, then you can analyze your data single model, like by using regression. Otherwise, you can take everything as a whole, you can do your path analysis. A structural equation model.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. Then anybody else? So if no more queries, then I think that
Yes,
we
sir.
can.
What is
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, please,
altered
please.
NO?
Sorry, pardon.
What is when is multivariate ANOVA?
Sorry, sir. Pardon. Your voice is actually squeezing like anything, sir. I can't able to hear you properly. Hello.
Shall I repeat?
Sir, your voice is breaking, so I'm unable to hear you properly, sir. So can you drop your question in the chat box so that I can read it easily? If your voice is not linking to me, so that you can do one thing, that you can drop your question so that I can take 1 or 2 minutes to spare and to read your question. I can get back to you, sir. Hello. I hope actually my voice is audible.
Yes, sir. Your
Your voice is audible, sir.
Sir,
Audible.
reverse side, sir, from a participant who put me a question, I couldn't able to get it, sir. Getting.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam, look into it.
So in what case we can use multiple variate ANOVA, sir? That is multivariate ANOVA, sir. So multivariate ANOVA you can use MANOVA when your dependent variable is also when your dependent variable also is more than one, independent variable is also more than one. So multivariate analysis wherein you can apply. So whenever your left side, I mean to say dependent variable, right side independent variable, both are actually more than one. In such case, you can use MANOVA, sir. I hope actually I answered the question of Goar Hamad. I think so. He was a person who couldn't actually able to reach me through the voice, but his question is reached through message, so I could able to answer him. So I hope so. Actually, no more question from chat window, and as well as no more question from voice window also. So that over to you, organizer now.
Yeah, madam, go ahead.
A very good
Hello.
evening, one
Hello.
and all.
Hello.
It's my privilege to deliver vote of thanks on this session. I, Kavya MS, faculty of Shivanendra College, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our today's resource person, Dr. Manjunath S., for giving an excellent coverage